Welcome to today's episode, the podcast where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It is Wednesday, October 30th, the day before Halloween. The US election is a week away. David Fincher is in talks with Netflix to create a new series based on Squid Game, and before the new show streaming on Apple TV Plus, starring Billy Crystal, is out with its first 2 episodes called The Imposter and The Scientist. The last time I remember us doing a show which had the cast starring Billy Crystal would have been Monsters at Work, and I can tell you right now, this is no kid show.
I think this is the first live action project that we've reviewed, at least with Billy Crystal being the lead role.
I don't think he does a lot of TV. I think his TV experience was like 70s and the 80s.
Well, not only that, he doesn't do a lot of dramas. In fact, every single interview that I saw was everyone being like, you just do comedy. So
it's a
what was
departure
the main
from
reason?
comedy.
Yeah, so this is like the first time that I think he's done like just a straight up drama role.
What's your favorite Billy Crystal movie? When Harry Met Sally, City Slickers, any of those?
I mean, I haven't seen a lot of them.
He did direct 61, that Yankee fan. He's a big Yankee fan.
Yeah, he was really sad that he wasn't going to be able to go to the World Series because he was going to be going to London. He's actually in London right now doing press for this series.
And he couldn't make it back for one game?
He said that he was sad that he wasn't going to be able to buy a ticket for that.
I feel like if the Yankees haven't been to the series since 2009 and you're Billy Crystal, a known Yankee fanatic, like that you would find a way to get there. I feel like that's kind of weird that he's not going to be at one of the World Series games. But if they're out in 4, then it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so the premise of this show, though, unless you have anything else you want to say for the intro, is a recently widowed child psychologist meets with his next client who seems to be connected in some fashion to his past. Now, the child psychologist is Billy Crystal, that is Eli, and the client is Noah, this kid who doesn't speak very much. If I were to compare this series to one movie, it's easily The Sixth Sense, because the dynamic between the psychologist, older gentleman who's trying to break through to this kid and make him act normal because he's not seeing ghosts. This kid is seeing a tentacle monster, dolly painting dripping walls, and other nightmarish
Is
things.
that revealed in the second episode?
It's kind of in the first episode and the second episode. How it stacks up to other horror things that we've seen recently, well, it has creepy kids. The kid is certainly creepy.
The kid's creepy? Isn't
Noah.
he supposed to...
Noah's absolutely very
But
creepy.
I thought that like Noah was supposed to be a character that you care for.
I think he's possessed. He speaks in tongues. At the end of the first episode, we find out that he's speaking 17th century Dutch. It takes Eli too long to realize this, because in this day and age, 2024, we have this thing called AI, where you can literally just record audio, stick it into the Google, and then have the Google tell you exactly what that person said and what language it was written from. In his version, this could have come out like 10 years ago, would make more sense. He had to go to like some fancy school that he used to work at, talk to this one professor, get a link to this one address, and only then was he able to access what old language this kid was speaking from. And that's where we figure out that it's 17th century Dutch. So that's a place where it feels like they're just extending the plot where it unnecessarily doesn't have to be. But there are other creepy things that are happening here. Ominous drawings. This kid can not only speak in other tongues, but he also Have you ever noticed in horror films? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. But have you ever noticed in other horror films how there are 2 types of creepy kids drawings? One is if the kid is too good at drawing.
It's like extra detailed.
Yes, but it's always black and white, and it's always showing a scary monster like Babadook or something like that, right? And there can also be that really cheesy version where the kid is sparkly colors, and it's a little girl, and she's just drawing like her family, and then right next to their family is like some really dark figure that the kid is drawn, but like it still is a stick figure, and then the mom and dad are like, "Who's that?" And they're like, "That's my friend.
That's my friend, best friend or something like that."
So which one do you think this kid is drawing?
Well, probably the first one, I would think.
Yes,
right?
He's a very good drawer, and he's drawing all these like creepy black and white things. In fact, one of the black and white pictures he has is the same picture that Eli has on his refrigerator from his past, this cabin. So that brings us to another horror trope, creepy cabins. That's what this all like background connection that they have between each other comes down to, is this cabin picture. Eli does have recurring nightmares just like the kid. And we see a bunch of those playing out. I think the first scene is him waking up after seeing some guy himself jumping into a drained swimming pool so many times that he dies, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to that nightmare later on. So we get repetitive
You have to watch it again? Because I remember,
in a
I remember
different, yeah, we get to see it's actually him this time. So in the first scene, we don't see if it's him or not. We just see that he's dragging
we
his
get
foot.
shot from the back, I know.
Yeah. We also have dead ghost wives. So that's his wife is dead. She committed suicide. So
Does
we
she
think
talk to him? Because they're
she
saying
talks
ghost
to him all
wives.
the time. Tells him that he's doing a bad job. Then we have unreliable narration because he's constantly hallucinating himself. So between Noah and Eli, they're basically just two sides of the same coin. Dolly melting walls. I already explained how that's horror. But like you've seen it since Friday the 13th or any of those movies where the wall moves. Stranger Things where the wall can move. That's what's happening here. The tentacle monster. That would be more, I think, a Japanese influence because of the horror films there. And then adult child who feels neglected by the main character.
I have some Apple TV psychological thrillers here listed, and I wanted to see if you could maybe say how they compare to before. Servant.
So these are all Apple shows, right?
Yeah.
I can see the connection. Apple does have big talent, short episodes. It's got this like style. I'm not sure. Is it New York that one's filmed into? I think these are both.
I think it was. Yeah, wasn't it?
It's always some city somewhere. It's always a built-up city, but I would say that Servant is much better than this. Eli is presented as just kind of a classic grieving type person, and we just can't trust what he's seeing. And it makes for really good background TV. But with Servant, you actually have to pay attention to what's going on. Otherwise, you'll miss stuff.
Is this better than The Changeling, though? I remember you weren't a big fan of that.
The Changeling had plot holes, and this one has no plot holes, so there's a pro there. But it's more about what we're watching this guy get signed up for. So like he, at the beginning, is in therapy himself. He's depressed that his wife is dead. He blames himself. Every time he walks into his house, he says her name, expecting an answer, you know?
Are there some times where he says it and then you see through his mind her like walk out the corner? Or
not walk
like
out the corner, but you see him concentrate on the door that he found her in when she died. And then I think at one point he's explaining that she has Capgras syndrome, which meant that at one point she stopped looking at him and thinking of him as her husband and instead started thinking of him as an imposter, the title of the episode.
Right.
The thing about that, though, is we've just covered a very similar situation in the Brilliant Minds episode. That was this first patient where the woman stopped remembering that her kids, because she had had surgery. So I'm wondering if his wife had had some form of accident beforehand, or what could have caused her to develop that, or if he was actually, because this was all in a story in a bar, if he was in some way saying that Noah might have Capgras syndrome, but I don't think it affects kids all that often.
I know that we talked about Capgras syndrome in the Brilliant Minds podcast.
It's just called imposter syndrome mostly.
But could someone compare this to Groundhog Day? Because RogerEbert.com did. Do you see the comparison there at all?
Ooh, not in these first two episodes, not yet. I think the repetitive storytelling of his nightmares is kind of Groundhog Day. Like you just keep on seeing the same thing happen there. But it does seem like there is a little bit of movement going on with Noah because he's ultimately trying to find out what's going on with his kid. So he gets a call, and he used to work as a child psychologist. He's taken some time off since his wife died, and he doesn't want to take it on at first until he realizes that Noah is the same kid who broke into his house, who was like scratching letters on his door and just has this strange personality. And then Noah attacks one of his schoolmates because in Noah's mind, we do see it through his mind as well, that kid is about to be eaten by one of the tentacle monsters. And so he like stabs the tentacle monster, and that ends up just being the kid. And so then he's transferred to a hospital himself. They do an MRI on Noah. Everything comes out clear, but Noah's still suffering these hallucinations, so they must be in his head. And then Noah starts speaking English, which throws Billy Crystal's character in a huge loop because Eli's like, I know this kid can only speak 17th century Dutch. He says that in front of someone, and then the kid speaks like, I want to go home. And And by the end of that second episode, it just seems like he will end up not adopting, but taking care of Noah until they figure out what's going on. However, Noah has been kicked out of his elementary school, and until he can prove that the kid is a safe and not a safety risk to others, I don't think he's going to be attending any other school.
Well, Jacoby Jupe, who plays Noah, is the younger brother of the son from the Quiet Place films. If you can put that connection together.
Oh, the brother of
He's
him?
the brother of the son who was in
Yes.
both the Quiet Place films.
Got it.
So I found that connection to be cool. But what about Lynn? Because you talked about Eli and Noah now. Who's Lynn?
I think Lynn's just his wife. I think it's just the dead wife that just keeps popping up. She's certainly got a story. The kid at the very end, as his cliffhanger of episode 2, the scientist, says something along the lines of, "I know what you did," in a creepy way, because Eli has come to the kid and he starts playing a game with him about, like, I hate it when people do this, and the kid responds, "I hate it when people do this," and they keep on going, who lie, who are mean, and then what do you hate the most, Noah? And that's when he comes out with, like, an "I know what you did" type thing. And so it seems like the guilt is transcended beyond Billy Crystal's own headspace, and now the kid thinks that he's guilty of something as well. But that's
a strange connection. I mean, I know that both episodes you mentioned yourself, they were kind of short. They were like 30 minutes, right?
25, the second one.
Do you think that benefited and helped the show at all?
It makes it better background television because you can get through it pretty quickly. If you were just to sit down and watch it like I did, you get bored of it really quickly.
Originally, the pilot was supposed to be 60 minutes, and they were going to make every episode 60 minutes. It's 10 episodes. It's a miniseries. But then Apple came back and said, is there any way that you can make the series 30 minutes? And then they ended up cutting it down, and that's why it is as long as it is.
I think if you had combined these 2 episodes together, it would have been fine, but there really is no, like, ultimate climax in the story so far. So that's why they might have broken it apart even more, because they were just like, these aren't munchable, if they're that big. The acting is fine. So whenever you do decide to focus in for, like, a moment, you'll be happy with that. But if you concentrate the whole time, you're just going to be like, that's the same scene I just saw. They're like, we already know the kid is creepy. That's why I think this would have been better as a movie. And I also think that we are returning to Apple's sort of roots, and that's a good and bad thing. One is you have one celebrity, you surround them with a small ensemble cast, and then you're looking at something that feels like it should be small budget, but probably cost a fortune to make.
Well, it's interesting because usually I'll have like some talk about someone who read a book and then decided to write the movie, and then like Billy Crystal will be someone that they added onto the project. But that's actually not the case here. Billy Crystal, the idea originated from him. He was working with Eric Roth, who is the writer of Forrest Gump, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Stars
David
Born,
Fincher.
Dune, Killers of the Flower Moon, even the new Here film starring Tom Hanks that's coming out, I think, in a couple weeks. They're working on a show called Deathbed about a 100-year-old guy telling his life story to an aide. And then, after reading some books...
That just sounds like Ptolemy Gray, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But after reading some books, Billy Crystal was like, instead of making it some like old guy, because whenever they were like really thinking about the idea,
and they're like, Billy, you're not young.
No. They were like, instead of doing it, they were almost like, it happens too much. Let's actually make it an 8-year-old kid instead. So then they decided to try and go this route. So
you're saying Noah is Eli, and that's what he's going to learn over time?
I think that's what they're going for right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's a spoiler, because that's what Billy Crystal was saying in like every single one of the interviews.
Right. The only way that they could be as connected as they said is that if that was the case. It's just that I feel like there hasn't been like a clever twist to that yet. We haven't seen it presented other than kind of just it's supposed to make you feel anxiety. Maybe?
When you say clever twist to that, do you mean for the TV series or for things like this in general?
For that concept of an idea, it feels like maybe if that's the birth of something, then you would present scenes that would make it. This is just presented to be creepy so far, and a kind of a cluster of memories / nightmares that don't really fit together at all. If these were kind of puzzle pieces that you could kind of mold yourself and kind of like Dark maybe, because you're dealing with time yeah. But so you're saying that this cabin must have meant something to his childhood. Yeah, I mean, I buy it. I just don't see where that makes the story any better.
It was just strange to learn that Billy Crystal, like, this was basically his passion project. And then the huge reason why it's not a comedy is a big reason why he decided to also star in the TV series.
Mhm.
So, but
And I like Billy Crystal. I just feel like anybody who spends 10 minutes with Eli, especially that social worker who was trying to get him to adopt Noah at first, when his daughter, Eli's daughter, comes in and is like, your house looks like it was like a bombed up or someone robbed it, and there's things torn and ripped and stuff. And Eli is like, no, 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 it's fine. I just cut myself. I think the social worker who was there the whole time, played by, let me just check here because I do have her name, but she's not on the main thing, Gail. So yeah, when she overheard that, she should have been like, no, I actually think that this kid should come with me. Like she should have
right, I agree with
pulled
you on
back
that.
on that whole, like, you should be taking a troubled child under your care at this moment. He told her as much when he first talked to her. So I find it hard to believe that there's no one else in the city, whether it be New York or any other city, that's willing or capable of taking care of this kid.
I think it's for the sake of plot,
Right.
obviously, but like looking at it from a reality perspective, yeah, it probably wouldn't happen that way. What would you give the 2 episodes out
I
of
was
10?
disappointed sort of with the series because it looked cool in the credits for it. It reminds me a little bit of Dark Matter in that way, where I was really geared to see it. It was not the preview, did not pay off. Too many ingredients, no payoff yet, and it's stringing us along. So I'm going to say 4 out of 10.
Yeah, it's a 6.9 on IMDb, a 31% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Whoa,
It
that is
got
a
negative reviews.
stark difference.
Time called it the year's most disappointing show, so they sound to be kind of on board with you. The Daily Beast held their review. What is Billy Crystal doing in this ridiculous thriller series? The show suffers from its own disconnection from logic. I think a lot of people have a problem with just how it's a psychological thriller,
Right.
but they really don't see how things are connecting yet or how things are going to add up.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any potential for the series that it has in the remaining 8 episodes?
No, what I was thinking about right now is just that when the kid breaks into his house and he wakes up from a nightmare and he sees the kid is there and he's like, oh my God, you can't come through the dog door. That's bad. And then he brings the kid out. He gives it milk like it's a cat, like it's a stray cat.
Doesn't he feed it too? He also gives it food, right?
Gives it.
Gives the kid food.
I think so. Did I just imagine the milk thing? That was what I was thinking about right now. But you said what?
Yeah. Well, the one good review for it was The Guardian gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and they titled it "Billy Crystal's move into horror is brilliant," and said, "I don't know what mighty forces are responsible for the change, but thank you." And again, I think the mighty forces are Billy Crystal just himself for creating the series.
You're saying he wrote that article? No, it's served well in the past when comedians have made the jump for one reason or the
Like
other.
Adam Sandler, yeah.
Adam Sandler, you mean in like
Uncut Gems, yeah.
I was thinking more like Breaking Bad or a lot of stand-up comedians or Better Call Saul, all that. I don't think Billy Crystal is the problem with this show. I think it's just kind of the story. It's not even the plot. It just needs to be fine-tuned. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.